Look, we really need to talk about these particular World Eaters that were revealed over the weekend, and we need to talk about them because they're really, really weird. The concept of them makes sense, but the execution makes absolutely no sense in the context of their own context. These are the Eightbound, and according to this article they are virtually unrecognisable from the mortal Space Marines they once were. That's clearly not true, it's just a Space Marine. But ignoring that mildly incorrect statement, these are Space Marines that have been possessed by eight separate demons of Khorne. 8 of them. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 8 demons. Now, I personally feel like there needs to be an extremely good justification as to why these particular Space Marines, which have been possessed by 8 demons, are so incredibly not looking like they've been possessed by 8 different demons. When this codex drops, I want an entire page of lore just talking about why these particular Space Marines are virtually unchanged from how they were before being possessed by 8 demons, when every other Space Marine that gets possessed by a demon seems to end up looking like a horrific nightmare. I don't think I'm being hyperbolic when I say that these are like the least possessed looking possessed Space Marines I've ever seen in my entire life. Games Workshop has had such a clear design philosophy when it comes to, well, possessed Space Marines, and these are nowhere near it. They just look like they've been at the gym for longer than the other Space Marines. We even have now quite a nice kind of line of progression in terms of how possessed Space Marines came about. It all started with the Girl Vorback, and the Girl Vorback, generally speaking, look like horrific monstrous creatures that have got flesh and armour that are the same thing. They have bone spurs growing out of places. One of these guys, his arm is basically a mouth. Like, they look extremely messed up. There are claws where there shouldn't be claws. There are horns that used to be cables. There is skin that has grown out of armour. They look possessed, fully and completely taken over by a demonic entity. Even their leader, even Argol Tower, still looks extremely messed up, and he is possibly the least messed up one out of all of them. I mean, at least he's still got all his eyes. At least he's only got one mouth. I feel like of all of them, he had the closest bond with the creature that was living inside him, and he still looks like this. Compare that to this guy, or indeed this guy, and it's absolutely ridiculous to me that you would say that these have been possessed by 8 separate demons, and you've yet somehow come out of it just being a little bit taller, a little bit beefier, I'd say a little bit angrier, but they're World Eaters, so they all look that angry. That's not even a valid point. But you get what I mean, right? These don't look possessed to begin with, let alone 8 times. Now, you could be sitting there saying, well, Kiri, I don't think it's fair that you're comparing these to the Horse Heresy range, because these are, like, older. These are, like, in terms of the universe, in terms of the lore, the history, the story of 40k and the Horse Heresy building up to it, these are, of course, far older than those particular World Eaters. And you would be correct in that. You'd be absolutely right. These go back a long time. They are like the first, and so using them as an example is maybe not that fair. Luckily, we have new examples to pull from which look very similar to the Girl Vorback. We can see varying levels of messed up here, it's true, but even the least messed up one of these Chaos Space Marines that has been possessed by a demon looks significantly different to all the other Chaos Space Marines. Like, I can look at the dude who's got hooves for feet and whose armour has suddenly turned to skin around the thighs and has got a massive claw hand with a big old spike pointing out of it, and some of his tubes have gone, like, fleshy instead of being mechanical, and I can go, you know what, that guy looks kind of possessed. I think he might be a little bit possessed. Show me this dude, and there is absolutely no indication that he's possessed whatsoever. The only reason I think that you would maybe think that this guy is possessed is because his backpack has got a bit of like flesh going on. They've painted that, though. They've painted that pink. It doesn't look like flesh, it just looks like metal. They've just painted it a different colour. Same goes for this guy. That particular backpack, there are designs already like that, where it's got claws holding the vents that don't have any sort of skin painted on them. They're just painted as metal, and they just look like a slightly fancier backpack. I guess I'm struggling to make the connection between the story behind these guys and the models that they have to represent them. This is the result of possession on a Chaos Space Marine. This is what happens when a demon possesses a Chaos Space Marine. You end up with all sorts of weird stuff, and even the least weird guy has got some recognisably weird stuff going on. I mean, when you look at the dude who's got like 4 bone claws sticking out of where his arm used to be, and the fact his legs are on backwards, you can clearly see that something bad wrong has happened to that guy. And the thing is, it's not just Chaos Space Marines. We also have the Accursed Cultists to draw some comparisons to as well. Now, arguably, these should suffer from demonic possession in much worse ways than Chaos Space Marines, right? They're not as strong, they're not as powerful. These are baseline humans that have been possessed by demons, and as such, they are going to have even more horrific mutations than the Chaos Space Marines. And yet, a few of these are they've got away relatively lightly. Not really lightly, but relatively lightly. And they still look horrific, and there is still something visually there, something that really points to them being messed up by a demon that has taken control of their body and soul. Now, I wouldn't expect this guy to look like any of the Accursed Cultists, but I'd expect him to have more than 2 bits of horn sticking out of one arm, because that, to me, doesn't say anything. They're Chaos Space Marines. They're all covered in spikes all the time. And you know what? It gets worse. Honestly, these are the Exalted Eightbound, even more dangerous and demonic than others of their kind, because sometimes the spirit of an 8-bound World Eater can emerge triumphant, becoming one with the 8 Neverborn sharing its physical form. So because they've won, because they have merged with the demons, they have become slightly more possessed looking than the guys who didn't do that? I'm pleading, I'm begging for someone to make it make sense, because it's so massively inconsistent with literally everything else that we've known. I really thought for a while there that they'd just got the 2 units mixed up, like they'd accidentally put the little carousel image viewer in the wrong place, and that these were supposed to be above the others, but no, because these are even more dangerous and demonic, because they have successfully, merged, become one with the 8 demons inside them, which still makes them look remarkably less possessed than the possessed do. Oh, what does it mean? The thing is, I don't even dislike these models. I don't think they look terrible. They're not my favourite thing Games Workshop has ever made, but they're perfectly serviceable. They look suitably World Eatery. They've got giant weapons. They have some cool little things, like you can see that the demonic arm has got the chainsword coming out of it. Very Chainsaw Man like that. But at the same time, they also don't strike me as being all that special. And when it comes to the standard 8-bound, they just don't look anything like what they're supposed to be. Games Workshop has been making possessed Space Marines for quite some time, and we have a pretty strong, clear template for how they look. They look like this, or they look like that, or they look a little bit like this. Even the old possessed had more in the way of overt possession than these do. And the problem I'm having is that those possessed are possessed by a demon, one Neverborn for one Chaos Space Marine, and yet now we have 8 demons per Chaos Space Marine in the form of these particular 8-bound World Eaters, and that somehow results in them looking less like they were possessed by anything at all. It feels like someone made the models and then someone else went, okay, but what's the story for these? What are we going to do with these? Because we need to give them some reason for being so big and beefy. I mean, they could have been stuffed with syringes full of demonic blood, maybe. Not possessed, but given enhanced strength and speed through infusion with demonic essences, as opposed to just having a demon possess them, which you would think result in them looking like possessed. It just doesn't work for me. Like, comparing these to other things that have the same basis, the same context, the same story. And they're going to have to really jump through some hoops when it comes to the background for these guys, for me to not look at them and just think, you could have just made them big dudes. Could have just made them big, beefy dudes. As I say, I don't mind the models. They look okay. They look like big berserkers, and I like the berserkers, so that's fine. But the background to them just doesn't make any sense for what they are. I'd be super curious to know what you lot think of this. I really would, because this one's really got me scratching my head. Now, we are going to cover the rest of the reveals, but we're going to do that in 2 separate videos, one for 40k and one for AOS. I just wanted to get this out by itself, because it's going to be tonally different, because of all the stuff we've seen. These were the ones where I sat there and went, what are you talking about? What is this? Why have you done this? What is the point? It's the only one I've had that reaction to. So, I thought it'd probably be better to take all of that negativity and stick it into one video as opposed to spreading it amongst the rest of the stuff. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments down below. In the meantime, feel free to click all the things, Patreon, video, subscribe, all that stuff. Click it if you like, don't click if you don't want to. And as always, there's an affiliate link in the description for Element Games, which you can use to support the channel if you'd like. I leave it in your capable hands. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you for the next one.